I'm sorry. Maybe I should clue in as to what I'm waiting for here. Normally, my applause is a lot longer than that. And we time out these MCLEs out to the minute, so you don't clap, we wait. Let me tell you why you should have been clapping. I understand you're a little confused. If I were you, I'd be confused. You got to be thinking, how can a man this young and good looking, and you ladies are thinking that, and 3/4 of the men, how can I be an expert in legal ethics? I can tell you that it is strange, and let me explain it to you. My expertise comes from the fact, not from any advanced training or learning. They don't have an LLM in ethics. My expertise comes from the fact that I regularly read my bar journal. Like all of you, I'm licensed in this state of California. However, I do not live in California, nor do I practice law for a living. However, if you pay the state bar $410 a year, they will send you the bar journal. So it gets to my house every month, about the 6th or the 7th of the month. I'm waiting outside. I've got a lawn chair and a cooler. The mailman comes. He gives me my bar journal, and then I do exactly what all of you do. I flip right to the back, see if I know anybody got disbarred last month, right? Don't act like I'm the only one. And in the process of reading through thousands of these bar reports, I've come to the conclusion that legal ethics isn't that complicated. And when you come to a seminar like this, someone like me, we like to make it complicated, all right? But legal ethics is not an oxymoron, all right? It's not like military intelligence or happily married or country music. Well, you all can't be from the Inland Empire, okay? All right. But here's the thing is that and I come to seminars all the time and we make it so complicated. Let me just say this right up front. If I say anything in the next hour that you haven't heard before, you need to leave. I can't help you. All right. I'm going to come here to tell you the same things over and over with the thought that you might actually do some of them. And I got that motto, by the way, from a place I go every Sunday, church. I never hear anything new in church. Don't want to hear anything new. The day I go to church and my pastor has invented new people in the Bible, he starts giving me some, right? He starts giving me some parable about Jesus' twin brother Harold. That's the day I get a new church. I go to church, hear the same things, like I said, over and over, with the thought that I might start doing some of them. So I know we're in the wrong day, the wrong denomination for many of you, but we're going to have a little church up in here. Can I get amen? Amen. You can do better than that. Can I get a hallelujah? Hallelujah. Brother, can I get you passed around a collection plate? All right, we do that at the end. We do that at the end of my church. But I have a simple sermon for you. And I got the idea from this sermon really from a sermon. And the watchword for today's session is simply this. It's not the fruit, it's the root. I'm preaching that better than you hear it. Let me say it again. It's not the fruit, it's the root. Now, if you're a Baptist like I am, you know what I said is absolutely true. And you know that because it rhymes. That's all we really need as Baptists, all right? All right, but if you're a Methodist or maybe you're a secular person, let me explain this to you so it makes sense. I recently found in Arizona, in Phoenix, Arizona, my home there, I recently found the black church in Arizona. And it wasn't easy, all right? Now, how many of you, by the show of hands, have ever been to an African-American church service? Sister, you better raise your hand, but the rest of you, okay, good. Now, if you haven't been before, you got to go. You got to experience this just once, all right? But here's the thing is, before you go to black church, you should pack a lunch. If you get enough advance notice, you might want to shut off your newspaper and your utilities because black church is going to last a while. I'm in church, and I had forgotten this. And I went to church without eating. And my pastor is a brilliant rhetorician, but he is not brief. And he is giving a sermon, and the refrain is, it's not the fruit, it's the root. It's not the fruit, it's the root. And it has the illustration after illustration. It's a brilliant sermon. And I would be growing from this as a person except for one thing. I'm starving. So I'm not getting it. Whenever he says it's not the fruit, I start thinking of all the fruits I wish it was. I'm not getting any of this. Eventually, we get to the end of the sermon, 2, 3 the next morning, and I go running out of the church, and I get in my car, I drive and pull into the main street in front of the church. And when I get into the right lane, I realize it's a good time to look for oncoming traffic. Right, it would have been better about 15 seconds earlier, right? I look out, and sure enough, here comes a car barreling down on me. At this point, there's nothing I can do. I just sort of brace for impact. He sees me, fortunately, the driver, slams on his brakes, and he misses me by, I'd say, this much. Now, I thought he would be happy that this miracle occurred right out in front of the house of God, right? No, he's got an attitude. He decides to show his displeasure with me by demonstrating that he does not wear rings on either of his middle fingers. Either one, right? Now, it's a road rage incident. You guys know how this works. You have to assess the situation, figure out what my next move is. So I look over at the driver. Now, this is Arizona. You've been to Arizona. You know the average age of a motorist in Arizona is deceased. This guy is 20 years older than that. And he hadn't been taking the best care of himself. I can see the handicap placard hanging from the rearview mirror. So I think to myself, what any of you would think, I can take him. And I go to reach for my door handle, pray for me. And then I realize, wait a minute, you can't go beat up this old man in front of the church. Not in front of the church. The pastor can still see you from the porch. Around the corner maybe, but not in front. I've been in church all day. I'm spirit-filled. I know what to do. I turn it over to the Lord. I sit there and very prayerfully say, Lord, kill him. And I start thinking of all the reasons and trying to convince the Lord why it wouldn't be so hard. And then it occurs to me what my pastor meant. And this is important not for me, just for me, but for you in a legal ethics seminar. When he said it's not the fruit, it's the root, what he was saying is so often we judge our ethics, both morality and legal ethics, from the standpoint of the fruit, the outward manifestation of our actions. And we say, okay, if I have not done these things, then I'm okay. And I thought until then that my 9 years of being a Christian, it had been a good thing, that the fruit was good. The fruit was very good. You're not going to believe this. In 9 years, I had not beat up a single elderly handicapped person. You don't know who I used to be. That's progress, okay? But it occurred to me that there's more to it than that. And I realized that the reason I hadn't been beating up the elderly handicapped, I thought it's because I had ingested the tenets of my faith, love, kindness, charity, forgiveness, mercy. No. I've been beating up the elderly handicapped because they hadn't been messing with me. And when they started messing with me, my behavior started to change because circumstances changed. Here's what we've seen in the back of the Bar Journal for the last 3 years. Circumstances changed. I probably didn't reach here in Southern California, but you know the rest of the country has a recession. Did you know about that? Money's gotten tight, and we're seeing increasingly lawyers with no history of disciplinary records, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, starting to have problems with trust account violations and the like. Now, is it because we've had some great ethical breakdown the last 3 years? No. We've had a financial breakdown. And what happens is that these lawyers were never right in the first place. And circumstances dictated their actions. The reason I bring that up for us is when we go through all of these rules, please understand that the rules are not that important. What's important is the heart. And we're going to talk a little bit about the root. Because when you get in your heart and mind right, these rules don't matter at all anymore. We will do the right thing. And you don't want to have your law license, your integrity, dependent upon situations. If you have money, you can be honest. You want to be able to be honest all the time. So we're going to go to the heart issues as well. Now, I sort of scheduled this as sort of a 10 commandments of avoiding legal ethics. Commandment number 1 is in the original 10 commandments, and it's in our 10 commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Now, it's not actually in the bar rules technically. It's in the business and professional code. Apparently, the state bar never thought it'd be a problem if you start killing people. But the state legislature had a problem with it. So it says, conviction of a felony or misdemeanor involving moral turpitude constitutes a cause for disbarment or suspension in California. And let me just explain, because sometimes it gets to be a question of what's moral turpitude. And what's turpitude? You understand that turpitude is not what you use to get paint off your furniture. Instead of saying that you went to state school. All right, it is. And quite frankly, I'm not sure exactly what turpitude is, because you'll see when you look through examples here, a lot of things seem to fall into this. Let me just give you an example that you know will work for you. Let's just say, for instance, hypothetically, you're in Las Vegas. You're at a hotel, and you happen to notice that at this hotel, they're having a sports memorabilia convention. And hypothetically, people are selling copies, unauthorized copies of your sports memorabilia in the lobby. Hypothetically, this could happen. It did happen, right? You decide the best way to handle this situation would be to get 6 or 7 strangers and go confront these people at gunpoint. Hypothetically. If you do that, you do know you are losing your law license, right? Now, shouldn't have to bring this up to you because some of you are thinking, wait a minute, and it doesn't make sense. See, as I look out here, I can tell that most of you don't commit major felonies on a regular basis. Well, most of the people on this side of the room, okay? But I'm not sure about you people over here. Well, for the most part, and this certainly is a problem for me. See, it isn't Business and Professional Code 6101A that prevents me from stabbing opposing counsel. All right? There's a penal code provision that tends to get my attention a little more. See, this doesn't apply to most of you, but as you can tell, I'm really good looking. I'm not going to do well in prison. I suspect I'm going to be very popular, but not the kind of popularity I enjoy. As a result of that, I tend to avoid committing to major felonies most of the time. All right? You do too. The reason I bring this up, though, is to remind you that as lawyers, we have an obligation not just to follow the big rules, but the little ones as well. To really be ministers of justice, okay? To have a reverence for law. And I have to tell you, I haven't always been that person. Most of my life, I used to subscribe to the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught. And I would avoid committing major violations, but little ones, it's just a little law. And I can't believe not only that, but I was brazen in telling people about it. I used to run around the country as a legal ethicist, and I tell these stories. And some of my favorite stories back then revolved my love around playing poker over the internet for money. Anyone understand the problem of the legal ethicist? Speaking to lawyers about ethics and admitting to an activity that's a violation of 47 different federal laws? Now, they're little laws. But as a result of that, in my effort to not only give the message and be the message, I no longer tell people I play poker over the internet for money. I also stopped playing poker over the internet for money, all right? It's important for me to be the message. And I want to encourage you in that respect. As a lawyer, there should be a piety about you. Even if you have to fake it at first like I do. That, oh yeah, I tell you I'm a Christian, but you know, I'm pretending. I'm working on it. But I want to tell you, there's something you want to, because here's the problem is that I think that what happens around you, it says a lot about who you are. Here's my contention. As a lawyer, there are conversations that should stop when you walk into a room. If you walk into a room and people are still talking about stealing cable, all right, or bootleg CDs, that's you. There should be something about you in our position as lawyers that just creates this area where people don't act differently around us, and we act differently in accordance. Commandment number 2, thou shalt not bear false witness. Have any of you gotten the impression that people think that lawyers are synonymous with honesty? Any of you, when you're in your travels, meet people and they say, you're so honest, I bet you're a lawyer. It never happens to me either. Not only do people think we're crooks, I love the fact that they have no problem with telling us that. I'm getting my hair cut in a place. Now, this is a major chain. You have them all over Southern California, and I certainly don't want to name and embarrass anyone. We're on camera. It would be embarrassing and wrong to do that. So let me just say, if you go to this establishment, you may or may not get a super cut. But I'm not naming any company. That would be wrong. I'm in a chair, and the stylist says to me, oh, wow, you're a lawyer. That's so interesting. Because at one point, I thought about being a lawyer, but in the end, I realized I'm basically just too honest. I turned to her and I was like, wow, what a coincidence. You know, at one point I thought about being a stylist. Yeah. But in the end I realized I'm basically just too smart. That's not the right way to handle that. All right. For one, if you do that, you do not get a supercut that day. As I look out here, it looks like a couple of you guys tried that. Don't do that anymore. The other reason is I should have made her come to this seminar. I think that would have been greater punishment. Also, she could have learned, true, and she could have learned all the ways in which that simply isn't true. Here's the interesting thing is that our rules require a level of honesty and candor that goes so far beyond what anybody else would be required of. We should really be proud of these rules, and they're not always so easy to abide by. But look at just Rule 1200, false statement regarding admission to the state bar. It says in a nutshell, You cannot lie on your bar application as you did on your mortgage application. Well, I'm the only one living in a house I can't afford. Okay. This whole subprime thing happened because of me. All right. But seriously, obviously in that context, also when the bar comes calling, the single, I think, greatest determining factor of the punishment that a lawyer receives in a bar inquiry and investigation is the level of candor and honesty in which they respond to the complaint. The lawyer who, and you see it all the time, it'll say in mitigation, so-and-so gets just a slap on the wrist, and in mitigation, it's because they responded to the call, to the first call, they were forthright, they were honest, they agreed to make restitution, etc. On the other hand, you see just the opposite way, which is that the person who doesn't do it in aggravation, but why they are disbarred is because they never responded to the complaint. And then when they did, they lied and they falsified documents. It's not the crime, it's the cover-up. And I want to tell you that I think you can really, really, really always help yourself by being honest and fessing up. And it's hard to do. But I'm learning it from the greatest apologizer I've ever met, my 7-year-old son, Brendan. Brendan is the master apologizer. Here's what I mean by this, is that I took him last month to see Cars 2, the commercial. Yeah, you guys are smart, you know what I mean. This isn't a movie, this is a commercial for 40 more cars that I don't own that I now have to buy in 3 different colors. We're in Target, and Target knows it's a commercial too because the first weekend they have lined the entire store with these cars. My 7-year-old, we're in Target, and he thinks this is Christmas, and he is just ransacking Target, just pulling stuff off and throwing in the cart. And I say to him, I said, Brendan, you don't need any of these. You don't even play with the 40 you already have at home. And he says to me, in a voice that could be heard from, I'd say, like, right here to Dallas. Daddy, I was wrong. Daddy, I was wrong. I don't know why I always ask for stuff. You give me everything I need. I do not need these toys. Daddy, I am wrong. Now, what do you think the person way over in aisle 28 is thinking when they hear that? They're thinking they beat that child, right? We can't get the cars in that basket quick enough to shut him up, right? And I saw it happen in another context. I saw it happen, I was in a board meeting, and for a large national organization that has me on their board, I will not tell you who they are because they don't let me do that. And they would like to have some respect. So, but I'm on the board, and one of the vendors in this industry began using the organization's likeness and quotes from our past presidents in their capacity as past presidents, trying to link their upstart organization with our very big, prestigious organization you've never heard of. And so we sent them a very nasty note saying, don't do this, and you're using our likeness, and we will sue you because we have 9 lawyers who no longer practice law, and we have nothing better to do. And so we're at a board meeting, we're talking about our next step, and we're getting all excited because we can pretend to be lawyers now. This is going to be fun, right? And someone says, we got an email. And one of the board members said, I just came through on my BlackBerry. And she reads the email. Now, it probably didn't sound exactly like this, but this is how I heard it. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I should have. The guy literally writes us and says, I am so, so sorry. You must understand that my fledgling upstart organization, we just wanted to associate ourselves with the higher standard of quality and excellence. And we know that this organization is the epitome of that. Not only for the organization, but the individuals themselves, their professional and personal qualities of ethics and morality. We just wanted to be associated with that. But we obviously realized we need to earn that position, so we apologize. We've taken down the website. We are destroying all the copies. But we sincerely apologize, and please understand it was just meant out of love and respect. Who thinks we sued? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? Anyone? Of course not. We're in the room, and there are men and women, and there are 9 of us, and 3 people, when she finishes reading the letter, go, oh. 2 of them were men. I'm not telling you who the other guy was, okay? I'm going to tell you that one of the ways the easiest way to be honest is just to fess up. And not like the politicians do. See, the problem is that you ever get to politicians, they say something really offensive, and then they come on and they say, look, I want to apologize. I want to sincerely apologize that you are stupid. See, if you were smart enough to understand what I really meant, you would know that it wasn't offensive at all, and it was actually the right thing to say. But because you are really stupid, you don't know that. So I apologize that you're stupid, because we've cut educational funding, and had you learned something in school, you would know. So please accept my sincere apology that you're stupid. Right? Don't do that. Contrition, I'm telling you, works well. Commandment number 3, thou shalt not steal. I'm not going to go through the actual rules here because they will give you an aneurysm. But this is, you see things people in the back of the bar journal for. Now, 9 times out of 10, no lawyer ever means to steal the money. They're just going to borrow it. And you can see how this happens, particularly in a recession. You have a cash flow shortage. You need money at the end of the month to pay the rent or a salary. You've collected a retainer. And you think to yourself, well, you know what? I'm really doing the client a favor by stealing their money. See, if I don't steal their money, I can't keep the firm open. Certainly no one in a jurisdiction with 200 other thousand lawyers could do this work with me. I'm really doing the client a favor. And I would call them and let them know that I'm doing them this favor. But why burden their weekend? Right? And I'm going to get a settlement next month, no problem. And so you just rob Peter to pay Paul. Here's the problem in now, is that Peter and Paul over the weekend become friends on Facebook. They start talking, the jig is up. You're in the back of the bar journal. I'm making fun of you. You don't want that to happen, all right? I'm going to tell you that the root of this, though, however, is this, is that people tend to, none of you, the bad lawyers who didn't come to the seminar, but other people in America tend to always get themselves, leave so little margin for error. They extend their finances to such a large extent so that if they don't have a great month, every month, it's the poorhouse. They spend all the way up until the very, very limit, and then as soon as you get to that point, you want to leave some margin and cushion. And I'm going to tell you that as someone who knows that from experience of seeing other people do it. I've never done it myself. Seriously, we had friends over the house the other day, and they blew me away. We were talking, and they said, hey, we were out, and we were looking at some art, and we put it on our wish list. I'm like, what the heck's a wish list? Like, well, this is a list of stuff, we have a list, and if we ever get really rich, these are the things we'll buy. I'm like, you wait till you have the money to buy stuff? What is wrong with you? That's un-American. You're bad for the economy. The rest of us buy it and figure out a way to pay for it later. Oh, don't act like I'm the only one, all right? And I'm finding out as I get older and mostly whiter, sadly, that isn't the right strategy. I learned that actually from not practicing law, but my other son, my 4-year-old, Devin. When I'm not doing this, I do what any of you would do, which is sit on the couch and watch cartoons with my son. And we're watching, his favorite cartoon these days is the Roadrunner. Now, you've all seen the Roadrunner. Every episode is exactly the same. It's exactly the same. Beginning of the episode, a big box drops from the sky from the Acme Toy Company, right? Boom. And then inside is like a rocket launcher or a grenade or something that's going to allow the Wile E. Coyote to finally catch this elusive Roadrunner. And Wiley spends an entire half hour, right, blowing himself up. He's running himself off cliffs, in the walls. He never catches a Roadrunner. You know that. I know that. Devin doesn't get it yet. Every episode, he's on the edge of his seat. Go, Roadrunner, go. Now, this is cute the first 200-300 times, but after a while, I get a little concerned. And I say to my wife, baby, I think we need to get Devin tested. She says, you know, that's a good idea. It's a good idea. I'm going to set up tests on Monday for both of you. I said, what's wrong with me? Besides the obvious. She says, let me explain this to you. See, every month you get a toy that comes onto our front porch. And it comes not from Acme Toy, it comes from Bose or Amazon or my new favorite purveyor of yuppie porn, Sonoma Williams. Oh, I'm the only one getting the catalog. They print it out just for me, right? I'm the only guy in here who owns a big green egg and like all the accessories. I'm the only guy in here with a $400 grilling thong. I said that wrong, didn't I? Grilling tong. The grilling thong, that's another catalog. I'll tell you about that afterwards. And every month, I run my family's finances in the walls, over cliffs, trying to catch that elusive thing called happiness. See, I know that the rule is he or she who dies with the most stuff wins. And that I will finally prove once and for all that God likes me best if I have the iPad 3 before you do. And I just want to encourage you to remind yourself that, you know what, it isn't a matter of that, all right? And to not put yourself in a position where you're constantly on the edge of disbarment because you have to have one more thing. Commandment number 4, my favorite one. This is so good you're going to love me for it. Thou shalt not commit adultery. I'm talking specifically about the best rule in our canon. This is the one I'm most proud of. I have it posted on my wall at home. Rule 3:120. Let me tell you what I love about this rule is that it's built on a supposition. And I don't know if the supposition is true, but I so desperately want it to be true. See, the supposition behind this rule is that as lawyers, we are very sexy. Now, that's certainly true in my case, but let me help you out. What do you think about it? There's a rule here that says that as lawyers, we are so persuasive. We are so interesting and magnetic and so good looking that we must have a bright line rule that protects the client from our sexiness. And here's why I'm proud is that we have a rule because every state doesn't. I was in Georgia recently. Georgia doesn't have a rule. The policy of the Georgia State Bar is if you can get it, go for it. Don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that. Now, every state, but it depends on the state, depending upon the attractiveness of the lawyers involved. Now, it's true, but here's the best part. California has the most stringent rule out there. Our rule just doesn't say that you can't have a relationship with the client. Rule B1 says that a lawyer shall not require or demand relations with a client, incident to, or I love this, as a condition of any professional representation. By show of hands, any of you that good at what you do? I'm working on my craft. I really am trying to be the best I can be. That's not the deal I was able to work out with Kim this year. Maybe next year. I can imagine calling someone and say, oh yeah, you got to pay my fee and all my expenses and costs, and someone got to sleep with me. You got to be really good to pull that one off. But I bring up this rule. Now some of you say, Sean, you just bring up this rule for the cheap jokes. That's only 90% of it. The other reason I bring it up is that it talks to something more important at the root of this. See, whenever I see a lawyer who's violated this rule, I know that there is a fundamental flaw in the root, their thinking. Here's what I know. If you violate this rule, I know that you have gotten it twisted. You think that the purpose of a relationship, of engagement, is for what you can get out of it. What's in it for me? Now, don't get me wrong. On one hand, I'm a big fan of radio station WIIFM, What's in it for me? It's actually my favorite station. It's a preset in all my dials, in my car. The rental car I got, first thing I did, I set all the channels to WIIFM. Most things I filter through the filter of what's in it for me. As you can tell, I'm a very righteous and pious man, but most of my prayers are Spice Girl prayers. You know what I'm talking about. Let me illustrate it for you. You get on your knees and you say, Lord, in whatever form you think that is, Lord, let me tell you what I want, what I really, really want, what I really, really want, what I really, really want. Let me tell you what I want, what I really, really want. Oh, don't act like I'm the only one who knows the song. Some of you know the chorus, the bridge, Baby Spice's part. Don't act like I'm the only one who prays that prayer. And I'm finding out, however, that it really is better to give than receive. Once again, I've learned that, not as a lawyer, as a parent. Here's what I found out about being a parent that's wonderful. I have 4 sons, and the best thing about it is that raising children has been very lucrative for my wife and I. You don't make several $100,000s a year from your children? You're not raising Justin Bieber or Miley Cyrus? Yeah, me either. My kids cost us a lot of money. They cost us basically all the money we have. That's okay. We don't mind that. It's a good trade-off. Because what they cost us in time, they more than make up for in convenience on the weekend. Your kids don't spend the weekend driving you around to all the stuff you want to do and you sleep in? No. Okay, that's okay. Doesn't matter. They take up all my money, all my time, don't care. They more than make up for it in their appreciation. Your kids don't tackle you every day you get home and say, oh, thank you, Mommy, thank you, do something, Daddy, thank you. No. So let me get this straight. They take up all of our money, all of our time. We pour love, encouragement into them and get none of that in return. Do you have a better relationship? Think about it. Some of you can't wait to get home to those bloodsuckers right now. Let me tell you why. Because that relationship it shows you the key to the universe, the way to be happy. The reason that relationship makes you so happy is because you serve with no expectation of getting anything in return. Any of you waiting having a bunch of kids so that they can take care of you in your old age? Are they going to be taking care of you by living in your house in your old age? That's all our goal is to get them out, okay? And we're willing to pay for that. But the beauty of the relationship is that we serve with no expectation of anything in return. Here's what I'm going to tell you. The thing that will make you happiest as a lawyer is serving and getting your expectation of interest out of the way. Now, here's the good thing. You actually get something in return, okay? But that can't be the focus. And when you get past that, it makes life so much more enjoyable. And I promise you, you don't have this problem. See, this problem is obviously not putting the client's interest first. It is never in your client's interest to sleep with you. We can ask your spouse if you don't believe me, all right? I want you to think about this, all right? Part of our role here is to be able to give dispassionate, objective advice and representation. How do you have a dispassionate relationship with someone you're sleeping with? Unless you marry them first. Pray for me. You get my point. Commandment number 5, thou shalt not discriminate. Rule 2400 basically says that you can't operate your law practice like you would do if you were dating on the internet. I want to talk to you just a second about this, not necessarily from the standpoint of discrimination. Here's what I find about practicing with lawyers. And let me sort of take a step back and give you my sort of perspective on this, because it's somewhat unique. Most of you don't notice this. We have a lot of lighting and stuff here. I'm black. I don't tell anybody. All right, I have to lower my speaking fees in Orange County. All right, but somebody's from Orange County apparently. But no. But here's the thing: I'd say is that being a lawyer has been amazing, and that my experience with being a lawyer is that I think among all the people, we are among the most fair-minded people I can imagine. Certainly, so much different than others. My first job when I was a summer job, I got home from college first year, and my father, I think, wanted to make sure that I went back. So he got me a job on the end of a printing press. Now, I can't imagine any of you have ever worked on the end of a printing press. Let me tell you how this wonderful job works. I stand on the end of the printing press, and as the documents come out, I stack them neatly on the pallets, and from time to time, as a jam or obstruction occurs, I've been instructed to put my hand into the moving printing press to remove the obstruction so that we don't slow down the press and ruin the production run. I never once won Employee of the Month. So let me tell you a little secret. I'm a little partial to my fingers. I wanted to go back to college with all 10 of them because it's very difficult to pump the keg with 9 fingers. Don't judge me, pray for me. My boss, however, a man who had risen through the ranks, a guy we called Lefty. And Lefty had apparently been to the motivational seminars, and so he was trying to spur me on to greater heights of corporate excellence. And he would always say things like, hey, Carter, I bet you put your hand in there if that was a piece of chicken. Exactly. Now, I'm going to put my hand into a moving printing press for a piece of chicken. Now, 3-piece and biscuit maybe, but 1 wing? That kind of comment never happens in any of your organizations. I'll take a step further. That thought doesn't run through your heads. We are way beyond that. But the problem is that we still have perception issues that create problems. So I go all over the country doing this, and I recently, for instance, a couple years ago, went to North Dakota. I was very excited to go to North Dakota because I'd never been to a Dakota. I had never known anybody who had been to a Dakota. So what I did was I filed my registration and permit papers, and the other African-American left so I could come in. In round numbers, approximately how many African-American lawyers do you think are members of the North Dakota Bar? In round numbers.
0.
How about Asian-American? Round numbers. 0. Latino? Round numbers. Openly gay and lesbian? Openly. Round numbers, okay? I was amazed. 3 days in North Dakota, did not see a person of color. So weird, I stopped at the gas station and returned a rental car and said, can you give me directions to the nearest black person? The guy drew me a map to Detroit. But the truth of the matter is that it isn't much different when I go to other places. I was in Atlanta. Now, Atlanta has a lot of people that look like me. All right, and I can't get away from them anywhere, and I'm trying to. All right, everywhere I go, there are a lot of African Americans in Atlanta. I get to this firm, they're on the 50th floor, take the elevator up, I get to the 50th floor, walk out, and I think, I have taken the elevator to North Dakota. Must be a walk-elevator, right? I don't know how this works. And perceptions create small problems. Let me give you an example. First started practicing law, I was in Boston. Went to New York to close a deal. By the way, this is the time when you actually had to go and be somewhere to sign something. It was amazing. And I got there. Now, the lawyer on the other side has never met me. I'm waiting in the conference room for him and his client to show up. And this lawyer has no reason to suspect that I'm African American. All right, one, my name's Sean Carter, not a particularly ethnic name. And second, the whole time we had been negotiating this deal, I had been using my white voice. You don't think I spoke like this when I had a job, do you? I had a white voice, a very good one. I could fool anybody. I could fool people who knew me. It's true. I picked up the phone one day, Sean Carter speaking, and the woman on the other end is very confused. She says, I think I have the wrong number. I said, well, how may I redirect your call, ma'am? She said, I'm trying to reach Sean Carter. I said, well, I'm Sean Carter. She said, no, I'm calling for my grandson, and he's black. I said, Nana, it's me. I said, who's that white man answer the phone? I'm trying to make partner. Call me back in 7 years. Yeah, we talk about that in another seminar. But here's the thing is that this lawyer walks in the room, has never met me before. He sees me sitting there, and he's so happy to see me. He's got all this big stack of closing documents, and he puts them down on the table. He says, oh, I'm so glad to see you. I need you to make 6 copies for everybody. Here's where I'm wrong. I go make the copies. And the reason is, there's 2 reasons. One, when I make the copies, to make the copies, he has to give me the client matter number. Now I have the client matter number, I'm rich. Right? It's limos and pizzas all the way back to Boston. But the other thing is, I can't wait to see the look on this man's face when I introduce myself as Sean Carter. So sure enough, I make the copies, put them down, and say, I'm Sean Carter. He's mortified. And here's where I felt bad afterwards. I realized that his mistaken identity wasn't the result of any racial animus or bias. I shouldn't say it. You don't know what's anyone's heart, but I'm pretty sure. Now, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure. Let me tell you why I'm pretty sure. He was black, too. You want to know how this happens? In his firm, every other African-American man but him worked in reprographics. At the time, a much younger man, but still really good looking. He walks in the room, makes the most obvious assumption. Even as an African-American, he can't help himself. I see it happen all the time. How many of you ladies have ever walked into a deposition and they pointed you to a little tiny chair? All right, now is it because us men are trying to hold you back? Well, mostly. All right, mostly. But it's also what, 95% of the court reporters are women? People make assumptions. We want to make sure that we don't do that because they not only affect our employment situations, they affect the work we do for our clients, the assumptions we make about witnesses and credibility, and all of those things tie into this. Just want to remind you always it's important to sort of work against that. Commandment number 6, thou shalt not gossip. Talking about rule 3100, this is the legal ethicist's favorite rule. You've been in a seminar where someone spends 6 hours talking about disclosure. Sometimes we call it e-disclosure, and all the types of mandatory and permissive. What happens if someone, opposing counsel, sends you a fax, not meant for you but for the client? Can you read it? If you do read it, do you have to gouge your eyes out afterwards? We're not going to go through those rules for 2 reasons. One, that requires research on my part. I'm not doing that. That's why I do this. Secondly, 99% of the time this rule is violated, there's no possible pretext. Most of the time, it's simply carelessness. How many times have you seen this? You are in the grocery store. You're in the 10 items or less line, and someone is on their phone, on their Bluetooth, and they're having a conversation that is way too personal for the 10 items or less line. It is way too personal for their doctor, right? And you were thinking to yourself, why in the world would someone, anyone, do that? Why would they have this conversation? You know why? Because they think the Bluetooth sucks up all the sound. They do. They couldn't possibly want you to overhear that stuff, right? I need to tell some of you that because I've stood in front of you in line at the supermarket, okay? We all do it. I'm on a plane once, and I got my upgrade to first class, and it was a wonderful day. Now, I love first class, not just because of the snob appeal. That's only 90% of it. What I love about it is that when they put me on the plane, what they do is they board the plane back to front. But if you get first class, they put you on first, and then they parade all the poor people past you. Now, it's a wonderful thing because when they walk by, they don't look at you full on because they're not worthy to look at you. They should have worked harder. But what they do is they give me furtive glances. Furtive, right? And they're trying to, and with me, I always get a double and triple take. They're trying to figure out what athlete or entertainer I might be, right? So I'm coming back from Oregon last week, and a woman looks over at her husband and says, "Baby, that's Denzel Washington." You don't believe me, do you? All right. She said, "Baby, that's JJ from Good Times." Here's where I'm wrong. I turned to her and I said, "Dynamite!" Pray for me. I digress. Here's the point I'm trying to make. Sit next to a very important person. I know he's very important because he has to talk on his cell phone all the way until they close the cabin door and we no longer are allowed to use our electronic devices per FAA regulations, right? He's talking about this deal, a securities deal. I used to be a securities lawyer. He talks about it with such specificity that when he gets off the phone, I turn to him and I say, "You know, I wouldn't do it like that." He looks at me mortified. Huh? Because I'm sitting next to you, fool. Apparently he thinks this drink rest between us was a soundproof barrier. It's not, all right? Be careful. The other thing that's funny is that sometimes we violate this rule because we like to be important. We like to drop names. I'm one of these people, and none of you are like this, but I tend to mention things that have happened I think are impressive, you might find impressive. I tend to mention, if I do a talk like this, that I went to school with the President of the United States. I just might throw that in there from time to time. I might throw that in there not only in a seminar, I might throw that in there if you ask me the time. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to work that into a conversation. That's all I got. That's really all I got going for me, all right? But here's what I find kind of interesting, is that, you know, if you have an engagement you got that's particularly impressive, maybe the dollar amounts are large or there's some famous people involved, here's the best thing about it. The better your story is, the least able you are to tell it from an ethical standpoint. The only stories you really can tell are the ones nobody wants to hear. If it's absolutely boring, nondescript, and nobody will have any interest at all, feel free to tell it. Otherwise, shut up. Commandment number 7, thou shalt know thy stuff. This is interesting because California, as you know, is thinking about, and we've been thinking about it for the last 10 years or so, going to the ABA model rules. This might be the reason to do so. Our rule is different. The ABA model rule for 1.1 is different than ours. Our rule in A, I love this one. A lawyer shall not intentionally, recklessly, or repeatedly fail to perform legal services with competence. What's the little loophole there? Occasional negligence. You're occasionally negligent, good for you. 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10, you tell me the number. Whatever that is, every ninth client, tear it up, mess it up. I also have a problem, this is the problem with the ABA competence standard as well, is that competence is it? We look at the components for competence: diligence, learning and skill, and mental, emotional, and physical ability. Eat your Wheaties. Let's just take a second for just one of those, learning and skill. And this is something that's very, very dear to my heart. MCLA. MCLA, what we're doing right now. I know you think it's MCLE. There's no such thing. There's not a single jurisdiction, 43 jurisdictions, none of them require mandatory continuing legal education. Let me tell you what every one of them requires. Mandatory continuing legal attendance. You know what you have to do to pass this course? Be alive in 15 minutes. Now, some of you don't start laughing more, you might not make it, all right? But that is literally the requirement. Boy, that's a high hurdle, isn't it? And I go all over the country where lawyers come to MCLA with no intention of learning anything. Now, it makes sense if you've been to my seminar before. All right, but these are new people. I walked into a room once and a guy showed up with a stack of 8 daily newspapers. In America, I didn't think we still published 8 daily newspapers, all right? I don't know where he got these papers. And for 6 hours, I spoke to the front of his newspapers, and he got the credit. Any of you could do that, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. See, this profession has huge image problems. It never helps when one of us thinks that, say, negligence is something you get at Victoria's Secret. I need to help you out here. Probably some of you missed that. What you get at Victoria's Secret isn't negligence. That's called a negligee, or in the case of my wife, flannel pajamas. Don't act like I'm the only one, all right? But I want to encourage you to go further than this. Because here's the thing is, the requirement is, for instance, for ethics, that you do 4 hours in 3 years. I go to black church. I do 4 hours every week. And you know how bad I am. You've heard from me for an hour. I'm a mess. I think you need more than 4 hours. And I'm going to encourage you with all your skills to do this. And let me tell you why I encourage you this. And this is important for you to understand. You suck. Let me say it in a way that'll make it more palatable to you. I suck at this, what I'm doing right now. See, I think I'm good at it, but let me tell you how I know. I know I suck. I have the advantage that none of you have, is that they tape my work. Okay? And actually, the funny thing is, when they tape it like this, they actually, I don't know if any of you were here earlier, they made me up. Because if you put somebody on camera, you don't want any of their face to show up, right? So, like, ooh, that's a lot too ugly for TV. Let me get some makeup on him. So they make me up, and then they record me, and then they do me the disservice of showing it to me later. I have tapes from me from 5, 6 years ago. I was watching one from 5 years ago the other day, and I cringed. I thought, I suck. I should give the money back. Now, I didn't, because I spent it. But my prayer for me is that I look at this tape 5 years from now and think, Sean, you suck. You should give the money back. Kim, I'm not. I spent yours before I got it. But the point is, is that should be the standard. My prayer for you is 5 years from now, you look back at whatever you're doing now and think, I suck. And if you don't, I'm going to ask you, what are you doing? You should, as a drafter, as a negotiator, as an advisor, be constantly working towards it, and it's not 12 hours every 3 years, or 20, or whatever the requirement is. Imagine if, for instance, Kobe Bryant said, oh yeah, I had a productive off season. I spent 12 hours working on my game. All right? Shaq said, ooh, I spent 12 hours working on free throws. Actually, that's what happened, and that's what happened, all right? Shaq was doing MCLE with free throws, and see how well that worked. You want to do it the best you can. Competence isn't the right standard. Commandment number 8, thou shalt call thy client backeth. Let me say this in truth. You should feel free to violate every single thing in the canon on my authority, on camera, I'm telling you that. I'm telling you honestly, truthfully. If you don't want to do the work, great. You want to steal from the clients, good for you. You want to sleep with them, go for it. But you must call the next day. You know how that works, ladies? All right, maybe not. Maybe just the women in my family. But I'm going to tell you, here's the truth of the matter. There's almost never a bar complaint if you call the client back. Think about it from a bar standpoint. Your clients don't even know the bar complaint. They don't even know how to reach the state bar. By show of hands, any of you know the state bar disciplinary hotline number? Bueller? Anyone? Bueller? No, exactly. And you won't have to. And your clients will never have to either. Think about it. That number is so obscure. Remember when we were kids, and some of us are my age, but where we grew up in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and our parents loved us back then, but not a lot. Here's what I mean by this, is that they loved us, but we would never do things as parents now that they did, like leave us alone. Oh, I'm the only kid who was a latchkey who was alone a couple hours after school, right? They did the after school special just because of me, right? You know darn well you got home a couple hours and locked yourself inside. Now, or a couple weeks if your parents went on vacation. But the point is, that might just be me. Now, our parents loved us. So what they would do is they would make sure we had the important numbers on the refrigerator. And they would have a number for the police department, grandmama's house, fire department. How many of you had the State Bar disciplinary hotline number on your refrigerator growing up? Absolutely. And your clients will never have to have it if you call them back. Now, here's the problem. The problem with calling them back is that we tend not to want to if there's bad news. See, there's not a single complaint in the history of the world where the client said, my lawyer never called me for 6 months after winning me a $40 million verdict. You win them the verdict, you call, not that day, you call from the courthouse. Oftentimes, the judge is still there doing administrative stuff. You call the client, I won, girl. You don't call back when you have a bad result or you have a situation where you haven't done what you said you were going to do last time. And here's what I want to encourage you to do is to call back like Brendan. All right, you want to call back with contrition. You want to call early. And if you make it sound bad, I have a friend of mine, I learned this from a friend of mine, Dion, who he is such a good apologizer when he messes up. And it's almost all the time. You feel bad for being mad at him. I assigned him some work to do, and he didn't do it. It cost me a lot of money, and I was mad. Now, as a good Christian, I did what any of you would do. I wished hateful stuff on him. And he called me back and said, Sean, I'm so sorry I didn't do that. I was wrong. Let me tell you something. I'm irresponsible. This is why I have the problems I have in my life like this now. I never do what I'm supposed to do, and I'm working on it. And please just pray for me, brother. Can we pray? What do you think I said? Think I sued him? called the state bar. I actually felt bad. I had to go and repent for being mad at him. I want to encourage you really to fess up and come clean. Commandment number 9, thou shalt take care of thyself. Let me paraphrase the rule here. Well, I'm going to read the rule. It says you have to withdraw from representation if your mental or physical condition renders it unreasonably difficult to carry out the employment effectively. Let me read that to you in English. If you get sick or go crazy, you have to give the money back. Guys, I'm going to say this to you. You ladies can tune out for 2 minutes, assuming you're listening at all. You guys need to know this. You ladies already do. But guys, it is not a mark. It is not a blemish on your masculinity to go to the doctor even before it hurts. It doesn't even have to hurt. You can just go in there. I used to not have that idea. I used to have the idea of preventative medicine that says if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it is broke, limp on it a couple days. It'll probably get better on its own. Let me tell you how I learned that's not the best strategy. I'm driving from my home in Phoenix to a talk in Las Vegas. I get to the Hoover Dam and over the Nevada border, I start experiencing chest pains, pretty severe chest pains. Now, I'm like any of you. I don't go anywhere, all right, without my iPhone, Droid, Blackberry, Blueberry, Strawberry, Halle Berry when I can work it out, whatever it is, right? I go to Google and I type in symptoms of a heart attack. Find a website that lists 10 symptoms of a heart attack. And as I read each symptom, I start to have each symptom. In hindsight, I have to confess, not all of them applied to me. I'm reading number 7, sitting on the side of the road, reading number 7, thinking, ow, my uterus is killing me. I tend to get a little melodramatic. It says at the bottom of the webpage, if you experience any of these symptoms, nevertheless all 10 of them, go to your nearest hospital. I'm in Boulder City, Nevada. Have no idea where the nearest hospital is. Here's where being a lawyer helps out, though, is I go on the web and I find the nearest Taco Bell. See, here's what I know, is that by law, federal law, if you sell nacho cheese chalupas, you must be located within 1 mile of a hospital. Don't quote me on that. I go in, I get 2 nacho cheese chalupas, and I say, where's the hospital? True story, it's right around the corner. I knew it. I go into the parking lot of the hospital. Now, before I go into the hospital, I have a couple cigarettes. Not going to quit now, okay? Go into the emergency room. By the way, this is worth your time today. If you get nothing else out of this, here are the magic words if you go into the emergency room. I think I'm having a heart attack. There are no forms to fill out. You don't have to watch Andy Griffith reruns. You're right in. They take tests. The doctor comes to me very concerned. Looks at me and says, Mr. Carter, we're very concerned. We've noticed elevated levels of CPK in your bloodstream. Exactly. I'm a guy. I'm in denial. I mean, look, Doc, I don't even know. I don't even eat at California Peach Kitchen. All right, you said high levels of KFC, I might believe you. I'm going home. He says, no, Mr. Carter. They admit me into the cardiac unit. I spend the entire night watching my life bleep away. Here are the two things I learned that night. Two things I want you to take with you. Number one, they are very serious about no smoking in the cardiac unit. Who knew? The other thing that's probably more pertinent to the rest of you is I sat there and realized that I still had a speech to give the next day. And I had to go give the speech because I had spent the money. What was I going to do? And I hadn't even gotten it yet, but I spent it. And so I've got to figure out how to get out of this hospital and get myself well in 6 hours to get to this speech. And here's the thing, as I realized, is that it was going to be very difficult that next morning to give a talk. It was dynamic and witty, had something to say of substance. Hard to do those things dead. I'll prove it to you. Anybody remember the last two presidential debates in 2008 with McCain? See my point? Keep yourself healthy. It's your ethical obligation to get on that treadmill, all right? And don't think that you're taking time away from the clients. Think that you are working for them. And here's something else that's kind of interesting, is you know who else who might be helpful if you were alive? Your spouse. Well, we have to ask them first. But your kids, all right, the people in your community. It's kind of helpful in life to be alive for stuff, all right? So I encourage you to take care of yourself. Now, why we don't, here's the root of it, is ego. We think, well, I understand, I'm too important. Nobody could do this thing. There's only 200,000 other lawyers in this state. Nobody can do my stuff. And we've been taught to be that way. See, when you first started practicing law, if you're anything like me, you went to work for a firm, and what they would do is that they, at least for me, it's Friday afternoon, and it's 4:30, you're playing associate hide and go seek. You know what I'm talking about. You can't leave until a reasonable hour like 5, but you don't want anybody to see you and ruin your weekend. So you're in your office with the door closed, you got the light off, you hide under the desk. Partner comes in, now they've been an associate too. So they flip the light on, pull you right out from under the desk. And then they said, the client just called, we got a big thing, we need you, and here's what they do. You think, well, why can't you get any of the other associates? Say, no, Sean, we can't do that. We need you to put the Carter touch on this one. Well, if you need me, I understand. And then I spend the weekend putting the Carter touch on some bait stamping. 681, 682, 683. It still happens now. How many of you would get a call from the client and they say, oh, I could have called any lawyer in town, but I need the Johnston touch. And you spend the weekend, 683, 684, get your ego out of the way. Commandment number 10, the very last one, and we're going to end on this note. Thou shalt uphold the dignity of the profession. The preamble says something very interesting. These rules have been adopted to protect the public and to promote respect and confidence in the legal system. I think you know that there's not a lot of respect and confidence, and one of the problems is that we don't always appreciate it ourselves. It's amazing how seldomly we actually do appreciate the privilege of being lawyers. I'm amazed at how people have no problem with saying things to our faces. Let me give you an example. How many of you have heard a lawyer joke recently? By the way, told to you. Not you walking in on one. Like, hey, John, you're a lawyer. Come on in, let me tell you something disgusting about you. Come on. I don't play that anymore. See, I'm not going to say why you do, because I don't understand it in another context. I mentioned before there's a couple of new people. I'm black, all right? Been black most of my entire life. I usually don't count those 3 years I was in heavy metal music. But here's the point is, as an African-American man, a fairly large one, you can find it's hard to believe I don't hear a lot of black jokes. But that's because people don't expect it would work out too well, all right? But people have no problem with doing that with lawyers, and I've learned to start sticking up for us. I was on a plane. I'm in first class. You know how I feel about my first class? I think it's because it's called that because it's a better class of people. I'm wrong. Talking to the gentleman next to me, we start introducing ourselves. He says, what do you do for a living? Now, in fairness to him, I do not say that I'm a practicing attorney, because I'm not. I say I tell jokes to lawyers for a living. He gives me the classic reaction. Ooh, I hate lawyers. So, okay, sir, what do you do? He says to me very proudly, I work with the handicapped. I said, ooh, I hate the handicapped. Now, we're taping this, so I want to be clear. I don't hate all of the handicapped. All right, several of them, and they know who they are. But the point is that we want to do this, and here's why. There's got to be some pride in this profession and realizing that there's something special about us. I was reading recently on the source of all truth in the world, Wikipedia. So it must be true. 31 of the 55 founding fathers, 31 of the 55 men who signed a document pledging their lives, property, and sacred honor for the republic we enjoy today, republic that's the envy of the world, 31 of those 55 men were lawyers. Do you think you get a Declaration of Independence, a Constitution that's lasted 200 years and is the envy of the world, if we had depended on 31 investment bankers? How about 31 television producers? Or legal humorists? All right? There is something special about who we are and what we are, and we always want to represent that well. Now, here's the thing is, we got like a minute to wrap up here, and I'm supposed to do a Q&A session, all right? Give you an opportunity to ask questions. But here's the problem is, your questions insult me. They do. See, if you do this really well, there shouldn't be any questions. Think about it. Dr. King gave a speech 50, almost 50 years ago. We are still talking about it. The I Have a Dream speech did not end. Free at last, thank God Almighty, free at last. Any questions? We're pretty sure we knew what Dr. King meant. I'm certainly no Dr. King, so there might be questions. And to get the credits, we have to make sure that you have an opportunity to interact. So here's what I want to ask you to do. In 10 seconds, I'm going to ask whether there are any questions. At that point, here's what I want you to do. I want you to stand up, and I want you to feel free to ask a question that only you care about. That's going to keep these people from enjoying their lives and going in and having their break. A question, by the way, that I don't likely know the answer to. And even if I do, it's not going to do you a lot of good. So I think I said one or two things that'll help you. But I think you're going to need some backup from me. You can't go to your partners and say, hey, we need to change this entire firm. The comedian said so. But because we have to do the Q&A session, are there any questions? Oh, I'm good at this. I knew I was Dr. King. We'll just take a break and we will continue next. Thank you.